Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, people can spin it any way they want, Mike, and no question. And look, Sam Hinkie's put himself in a real good position where if a Joel Embiid is out for the year, wow, you just drafted Jahlil Okafor, who I really like, and I said that all along that I liked him. So for that reason, okay, that softens the blow a little bit. But it hurts the development because it means that Joel Embiid is off the floor yet again. So the last 11 games of his only season at Kansas, he's out with a stress fracture in his back. He misses his first 2 NBA seasons. He's only 20 years old, and he's only been playing since he was 15, 16 years old. So yeah, it's a huge setback in the development of Joel Embiid, which is a setback for this organization. You know, Brett Brown called him the cornerstone of the process, and now your cornerstone is shelved yet again. So sure, it's a big development.
Yeah, obviously, I would agree with you that it sucks that this guy's not playing, quite frankly. Like you said, hell yeah, it sets them back. But like you mentioned, you could spin it any way you want. My question, a couple folds here on Embiid. Does the second surgery he's getting, is this a different one from the first one, and why did he not get this procedure the first time?
Yeah, that I don't know, and hopefully we'll, Sam Hinkie hasn't spoken. I sat down with Sam Hinkie Thursday in Utah when we were out in Utah, and we had a one-on-one. I put it as a Q&A in the paper, and my first 4 questions were specifically about Joel Embiid. I'm convinced he knew at the time. I know he knew at the time that Embiid would be out for the season. Didn't say that to me. So that's a little bit disheartening. It's such a fluid situation with this. I don't know. Hopefully we're going to talk to Brett Brown today after they play this afternoon out here and maybe get some more light on what's going on. I talked to an orthopedic surgeon. There could be a case where Joel Embiid is still growing, and we've heard rumors out there that he is, and the bone didn't fuse together the way it's supposed to simply because he's still growing. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. Whenever I talk to anyone, they always first clarify by saying, they haven't seen X-rays, they don't know exactly what the operation was. So I would only be guessing, and I really don't like to do that, especially when it comes to medical situations, Mike.
Yeah, that's fair. And obviously, I kind of made that same opinion the other day. Is we had heard he'd gone from about 7 feet to 7'2". Is it just as simple as, look, this guy's growing, and because he's growing, that would be maybe a best case scenario. I knew someone personally who got this bone graft. He played in the NBA, and he's fine. It took him 8 months, and it's the same doctor who's doing Embiid this time, so maybe it's as simple as getting it done, and he's going to be okay. That being said, Bob, they took him at 3. There were risks. Do they take the same risk? Was it something that you would endorse now knowing what we know?
Now knowing what you know, I still don't think we know fully. It's funny. Now knowing what we know is that he'll miss 2 seasons. I understand that. But do we know after that he's going to have a really good 10-year, 12-year NBA career? I don't know. All I can say is, still looking back on it, yes, I would have taken Joel Embiid at number 3. I think when you scale down this roster the way that Sam Hinkie did, you have to swing for the fences. And quite frankly, it was a 3-player draft. And the other 2 players went ahead, and we all know how much Brett Brown loved Andrew Wiggins, and we know that the Sixers tried to move up and get Andrew Wiggins. It didn't happen. So you had to take Joel Embiid there. I'm convinced of that. You can talk, you could have traded out, done this, done that, the other. They checked all that, I'm sure. And you don't know what other GMs or other teams wanted to do. So, yeah, that's kind of what you had to do. And hopefully for them, hopefully for the fans of the Sixers, he does turn out to have a good 10-year career in the NBA, but this is hard to swallow right now.
Yeah, and obviously, I guess at this point you're kind of looking at him as maybe like, hey, a free agent piece that you add that you weren't really anticipating because he's not on the court these next 2 years, and then maybe when this core starts to build together, you add him maybe next year and you feel a little bit better about it. But right now it's not easy to spin it as a good positive feeling. But how about Okafor? You've seen him out there. The guy has, been up and down. You look at his numbers, you wouldn't be like, man, this guy's the next big thing. But from what you've seen of him out there, what impresses you about Okafor?
Yeah, and it's funny. I try to tell people that being out here, I really don't look at numbers when I'm watching guys. Jahlil Okafor putting up 20 and 11. I rarely even look at box scores. What I do when I'm out here is I just watched the way they play and how that'll translate into the NBA. Can they move defensively? Do they get where they're supposed to be defensively? Just little nuances of their games, and obviously the overall. Do they go after the ball strong? Is he in position to get the ball even though he didn't? Some things with with Jahlil Okafor is maybe his rebounding numbers won't be that high, but what he does do a decent job of is he keeps his man out of the action. So when he boxes out, he could do a better job of going after the ball, I think, but he keeps his man away from the ball for the most part. Sometimes he gets caught behind. There are little things that worry about him defensively, a lot of things that you worry about him defensively. But offensively, I'll tell you, there's just a lot to be excited about if you're a fan of this team. His footwork, his ability to pass out of double teams, the way he sees the floor, he can drop step with his left or right foot, shoot over either shoulder. He has a real good feel of where the double is coming from and when it gets off and how to get his man in a spot where he can beat him. He offensively, he's pretty fun to watch, and it'll be neat to see how that mixes in with the Nerlens Noel this year. And if Stauskas is shooting the ball pretty well, and Covington, you might see some decent things out of him.
Yeah, and you hear what Okafor has said. He really seems like he said his role is to dominate, and he can do a lot of great things on the court. You wonder if guys like Nerlens, and you're going to talk to Brett Brown tonight, are they as excited, or do they see even more than they anticipated from Okafor?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Brett Brown hasn't talked, but all the teammates that we talk to, everyone that I talk to about Jahlil Okafor, they're just, their jaws drop. They just think that he is an unbelievable presence in the paint. And, it's the nimbleness. It's the, he's got that 6'10", 6'11", 270-pound body. But yet here he is using drop steps to get around bigger guys or smaller guys, and just using a finesse game as well as a power game. I think he can be a little bit better that when he shoves and gets down to the 3-5 foot area from the basket, he's got to stay there. Too many times a pass will come and he'll take baby steps out to catch it. Now instead of catching it 3 to 5 feet, he's catching it 7 to 10 feet away. You know what I mean? So I think that's what he needs to work on a little bit better. And once Brett Brown gets a hold of him and they do all their conditioning stuff and get his body to where they want it to be, I think there could be some interesting stuff going on there.
Let's look at some of the other interesting storylines that I guess going forward. Let's start with Tony Wroten. He's expected to be ready maybe for the start of the year. He got surgery on February the 3rd. You would think he would be the favorite to be the point guard. Do you think the point guard is on this roster or in the summer league currently?
I don't think it's on the roster. Tony Wroten to me is not a starting point guard. Tony Wroten, if you're becoming a good team, he is a great piece off the bench. And if you're a really good team, I think Tony Wroten would be a perfect fit on a good playoff team in the league, coming off the bench for 15 or 20 minutes, providing that spark, the offense that they need, maybe a spot starter for injuries, but he may have to start this year for the Sixers. I would be surprised if he's ready at the beginning of the year, unless his tear wasn't all that bad. But it's the second time since his senior year in high school, so I would be a little bit surprised if he's ready to go at the opener. I've said before, and I'll say it again. As far as the starting point guard for Game 1 this year, I don't know who that is. I will say, though, that the point guard for the future for this team, he could be in high school. He could be overseas. He could be in grammar school right now. I just don't think it's anybody that's currently occupying this roster.
Do you look at Pierre Jackson as a piece, not in terms of he's a starter or a future, but is he a guy that could win a lot of minutes on this team?
Yeah, he's a piece, and I have to see some more of him. Is he something different than a Tim Frazier, than anybody, the Larry Drew the third, those other guys that they run in and out at the point guard spot? He does have some talent. He can score a little bit. I think they would lean more towards, now that you have a couple of shooters, now that you have, a big man that might be able to dominate the middle, and you saw what Ish Smith developed last year with Nerlens Noel. I think they might be leaning more towards a passing first point guard. To Pierre Jackson's, the Isaiah Cannons. Those guys like to score, and they can score. But I don't know if that's exactly the way Brett Brown wants to go. I see him looking more towards a point guard that can push the ball. Sure, is a threat to score, no question about it. But first and foremost, can push the ball out and get the ball to the guys they want to score.
We'll talk with Bob Cooney from the Philadelphia Daily News. The Vegas Summer League, the Sixers will take on the Knicks. And Aldemir's not here, but we saw him in Utah, and obviously he came with a much more developed game than what we saw in him in limited time before. Is he a guy that could be a surprise addition to this roster?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. He has one thing that he can do, and that's it, and that's a rebound, and he's good at it. There's no question he's good at it. But there's just deficiencies so many other places. I mean, yeah, he hit 3 of 6 3-pointers in a game when he was left wide open against the Celtics in a Utah Summer League. Is he going to do that? And his first one was from 24 feet and shot at 22 feet. The guy's not an NBA scorer by any means. He doesn't have an NBA body by any means. Can he get some rebounds? Yeah, absolutely. But when push comes to shove in the real action of the NBA, I don't know that Furkan Aldemir, if you're looking, to put a good roster out on the floor, is your first big off the bench. And if he's not, where does he fit in?
Yeah.
So I don't know. If his offensive game can develop a little bit more, and that can't be overstated. You can't have a guy on the floor that simply can't score at all, especially on a Sixers team that struggles to score anyway. But if he can develop his offensive game a little bit, there's no question his rebounding is there. And he's a question mark in my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting because they paid him a decent amount of money. I mean, for what everybody else is getting paid on this team, he's making some decent money for what they got. Let's look at Jakar Sampson, a guy who, these are what the Sixers have been trying to do the last 2 years, Bob, is find guys. Did they maybe find a diamond in the rough that could be some sort of off-the-bench player?
Yeah, he and Jeremy Grant, two guys that just seem to keep growing and they seem to get longer and more muscular, and then that's a great asset to have on the NBA floor. I remember last year we were at a practice and Jeremy Grant was walking by, and I was just talking to Brett Brown, and Brett stopped Jeremy. He said, "Get in a defensive stance." And Jeremy didn't, and you look at him, you're like, wow, that's just a long, long body. And now he got even longer, and Jakar's exactly the same way. So if you're doing that running style that Brett Brown wants to do, you got to defend, and you have to defend in transition. And those two guys lend themselves to be that way. They're long, they're athletic, they can run. So they're limited a little bit offensively. If they can get the ball to the hole and maybe develop some kind of a jump shot and then really thrive, especially in transition defense, sure, they're going to have a spot here, either whether it's on the Sixers or somewhere in the league. They can hold their own that way.
All right, the one guy, too, let's get your thoughts on Nick Stauskas. Now, he's not going to play against the Knicks tonight, but he's been out there hanging around. And, do you get a feeling that this guy is going to be a good fit and that they're going to roll him out there and see if he can play? Is he going to get major minutes, or is he going to be more of a role player?
Oh, I would assume he's your starting two-guard off the bat. And that's just my guess. I know Brett Brown liked him last year. He even went on record and said, they wind up with Joel Embiid and Dario Saric, two guys who weren't going to play. He said, I thought we were going to get Andrew Wiggins and Nick Stauskas. So it's a guy that they like. I was out at the Combine in Chicago last year with Nick Stauskas, and people couldn't believe what a good shooter he is. If you watch film of him, and I have a good friend who covered him at Michigan, he also developed a little bit of a game off the dribble. He likes to. He's big and strong enough, and has a little bit of quickness that once he does beat you off the dribble, he's got a nice little spin move in the lane. He's a real good layup shooter. And once contact comes, the play isn't over. He's still looking to get the ball up to the rim, and is often successful. So, his game didn't translate in Sacramento, and that's a concern. And he didn't even get on the floor a lot of times, so that's also a concern. So you have to see how he fits in with this system. But my God, if the system ever needed shooters, there's no one more than the Sixers, and Nick Stauskas is supposed to be just that.
Bob Cooney, Okafor, Noel, Covington, Stauskas, and then pick your point guard. Is that a five that's competitive?
Perhaps maybe a Covington coming off the bench and a Jeremy Grant starting there, so you can get a little bit more defense. Yeah, they have some things you can work with. And look, people bring up to me all the time, Mike. Is it another year of tanking? And I don't write that word, and I don't really say it. I understand what's going on, and that is that the organization hasn't given Brett Brown NBA players with which to work, and that's why the losses pile up. This year, I think they'll win maybe 25, maybe between 25-30. That might be a little high, 30. They're going to be better just simply because you have better people on the floor. Listen who you just talked about. He talked about Jahlil Okafor and Nerlens Noel on the floor. Nerlens has another year under his belt. That's the best front line you've had since Brett Brown's been here. Now you have some shooters in Covington and Stauskas. So, there's some pieces that are starting to fill in. A Jeremy Grant, a Jakar Sampson, like we said. So I think they're going to be just a little bit better this year simply because the talent's a little bit better.
He's Bob Cooney from the Philadelphia Daily News in Vegas with the 76ers taking on the Knicks, their final summer game tonight. Okafor going to play tonight, Bob? Do you know that?
I believe he will, yeah. He sat out the other night, got his rest. They didn't practice yesterday. They just had a team meeting yesterday morning, and pretty much the guys had the rest of the day off to do what they wanted. They wanted them to rest as much as they could. You know how easy that is to do here in Las Vegas. So I would assume Okafor will be out there tonight. I'm hoping Kristaps Porzingis is out there for the Knicks tonight. Langston Galloway from St. Joe's is on the Knicks roster. So hoping to get a look at him. So, if your listeners at home want to see some decent basketball, hopefully they get it in the Sixers game tonight. Yeah, that's about an hour start from now Eastern time here on the East Coast. Bob Cooney from the Daily News, always kind enough to jump on board. Enjoy the hoops tonight, this afternoon there, Bob. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.